ADR. Promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Former ruling party Alliance for the Republic in Senegal counters President Faye's statement on empty coffers.
Of course, we agree that the 100 days cannot be an opportunity to present a balance sheet, but it is a major opportunity to define the fundamental orientation.
Opposition party in Togo, ANC, denounces arrest of demonstrators, plans for more protests. Mali's Independent Election Management Authority meets political parties following suspension of ban. And Gambian lawmaker alleges Parliament rejected Women's Amendment Bill 2024 to get budget support from international community.
The government is not going to implement this. It's not going to implement the law, because if they implement the law, they know that people will go out there for them. So they are not going to do that.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin here in Senegal, where the former ruling party, the APR Alliance for the Republic, has responded to the statement made by President Bashir Diomaye Faye over the weekend. The party of former President Macky Sall began by taking stock of the 100 days of the current Senegalese president. The party also gave its views on the political funds that Bashir Diomaye Faye accuses Macky Sall of having emptied. Seydou Gueye is the spokesman for the Alliance for the Republic.
Of course, we agree that the 100 days cannot be an opportunity to present a balance sheet, but it is a major opportunity to define the fundamental orientation of the vision and the political projects to be implemented in order to respond to the legitimate expectation of the people. Alas, there were 100 days of incompetency, chatter, trial and error, and confusion about the role of the political collapse. In this regard, it is worth recalling President Faye's major commitment, which he reiterated many times, to abolish them without delay once he came to power. Unfortunately, on this point, as on many others, it is still relativism that prevails. Instead of abolishing them, President Faye decided to repackage them in secret after admitting to have started using them. Still on this point, President Faye has made the same eyebrow, who found nothing when arriving into power. This response reflects his manifest ignorance to the rule and, better still, a failure to share or collaborate with his department, whose skills they excel. These things that I have just mentioned exist and have been voted by the National Assembly for several decades without undergoing any variation either upwards or downwards.
Seydou Gueye is a spokesman for the Alliance for the Republic, former party of former President Macky Sall. Well, in Togo, opposition National Alliance for Change ANC continues to denounce the arrests of people during the latest demonstrations against the new constitution. The opposition party says it is determined to take to the streets to win its case. The political group also discusses its forthcoming battles against the constitutional revision. Eric Juppé is the spokesman for the ANC.
L'ANC continue à travailler et préparer des manifestations.
The ANC continues to work and is prepared for demonstrations, but it's very difficult because today all the freedoms to demonstrate are being interfered with, or at least we are being made to struggle to organize demonstrations in the streets. According to the law, you can't demonstrate in the main streets of the capital. If you have to demonstrate, you have to move away. You have to hide, as it were, in order to demonstrate. That means that the right to demonstrate doesn't exist. We cannot accept the Constitution, which is why our only elected representative in the National Assembly refused to take his seat. Mr. Jean-Pierre Fabre, who is elected in the Gulf, refused to take his seat because we cannot accept this Constitution and this Assembly. And you must realize that 98% of the members of the National Assembly at 133. I don't see how in a country where almost 100% of the population is represented, we can say that 100% of the population votes for a single party. That doesn't exist in a democracy.
100% de la population est votée pour un seul parti. Cela n'existe pas dans une démocratie.
Eric Dupuy is the spokesperson for the Alliance for Change in Togo. We'll do have more of this discussion on our guest interview segment. In the meantime, in Mali, the Independent Election Management Authority met on Monday with political parties and groups. This follows the lifting of the suspension of the activities of political parties and associations. During the meeting, the electoral umpire did not give a timetable or date for the presidential election. Present in the meeting, the members of the March 31 declaration for a return to constitutional stage a walkout, demanding the release of the 11 politicians still detained by lifting the suspension of the activities. Ejatiso completes the story.
According to the declaration of March 31 for a return to constitutional order, there is no question of discussion with the Independent Election Management Authority. Its members present in the room, the opposition coalition, simply boycotted the meeting before the release of their detained comrades. Also during the meeting, neither the timelines nor the dates of the presidential elections were discussed. According to Zainab Evelyn Jacques, president of the coalition des Forces Juvéniles pour le Renouveau au Mali, these points should have been on the agenda. Furthermore, the president of the organization responsible for the electoral process, Mustafa Cisse, explained that his body does not have the competence to set the date of the vote. This meeting comes against a backdrop of tensions following the multiple arrests of politicians and opponents of the transition in Mali.
That was a report filed in by our Bamako correspondent Aliu Cham and voiced by Ejatiso.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, more news from Mali now. A court has sentenced Musa Jara, commonly known as Chez, an innovator who specializes in making of drones from recycled plastics, or to a suspended year in prison. He was sentenced together with his close friend Aliou Traoré, who was arrested together with him in May this year. This is after he was found guilty of digital identity theft and dissemination of false news. Augustin Coley has more details in this report.
The mandate verdict by the Anti-Cybercrime Court of Mali follows the arrest of the two men in May. They were accused of digital identity theft, dissemination of false news, defamation, and disturbance of public order before the Committee of High Representatives of the authorities in the regions of central Mali. Chez is known for his work in the design and assembly of civilian drones in Mali, and his arrest followed an investigation into suspicious online activities, including the creation of false profiles and the dissemination of false information that could disrupt public order. In January 2024, Mali praised the feat of some Malian computer scientists who allegedly managed to hack the system of the French company Adimia to recover biometric data. Adimia, however, denied these allegations, claiming that its data had not been hacked. This situation since raised questions about the fairness of the treatment of cybercrime cases in Mali. According to reports, the prosecutor had requested severe sentences of 2 years in prison for Chez and 18 months, including 1 year in prison for Traoré. The civil party also requested financial compensation of 3 million CFA francs for the damage suffered. After a deliberation initially scheduled for July 8 and then postponed, the judge finally rendered his verdict, recognizing the guilt of the accused and condemning them to a 1-year suspended prison sentence. This sentence means that they will only serve their sentence if they re-offend. This decision allows Chez and Traoré to regain their freedom immediately after more than 2 months of detention.
Augustin Coley filed that report. The Nigerian government is being urged to exempt stockfish and other seafood products from import duty to reduce the cost of high-quality protein and ensure availability. The call was made by stakeholders in the stockfish business, including the Norwegian Seafood Council, importers and dealers at a seminar in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial hub. WD Altusmanamar report.
The seminar aims to bring together stakeholders in the seafood sector to share knowledge and promote consumption of high-protein foods among Nigerians. The Norwegian ambassador to Nigeria, Sven Bera, appealed to the government to include stockfish and other seafood products on the list of staple foods with zero import duty.
The government has presented a proposal to have a duty-free window for some food products that would make it easier for Nigerian people to get food on the table. And there are a few products on that list, but we would like to suggest that the stockfish heads could be part of that list as well.
Johnny Heiberg, Director of Norwegian Seafood Council, speaks on the benefits of cooperation between his country and Nigeria.
Increasing cooperation between Nigeria and Norway, and not at least try to increase the export or the import of the dried seafood, the stockfish, which we think is very important of the Norwegian and Nigerian culture. It's been going on for more than 100 years. I'm sure it's going to go on for more than 100 years more, and this is something that connects our two countries together.
The Permanent Secretary of Nigeria's Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, Oloruntola Olufemi, reiterated the need for partnership and collaboration with the Norwegian Seafood Council to ensure affordable protein for Nigerians.
What the Norwegian Seafood Council does to support the importation of fish and also the exploit of government to grow fish production in Nigeria is paramount to the ministry, and the ministry is seeking cooperation and partnership to better fish production in Nigeria.
Available data from Nigeria Bureau of Statistics shows that Norway exports a significant amount of seafood to Nigeria with an annual value of around 30 to 35 million US dollars and a quantity of 10,000 tons of stockfish heads, making Nigeria the largest importer of Norwegian stockfish and a crucial partner in the seafood trade. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Former ruling party Alliance for the Republic APR in Senegal counters President Faye's statement on empty coffers. Opposition party in Togo, ANC, denounces arrests of demonstrators, plans for more protests. Mali's Independent Election Management Authority meets political parties following suspension of ban. And still ahead in the news, Gambian lawmaker alleges Parliament rejected Women's Amendment Bill 2024 to get budget support from international community. We do have a guest interview, the press review, and sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Well, don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org. Let's take you now to the Gambia, where a lawmaker has alleged that Parliament only rejected the Women's Amendment Bill 2024 to get budget support from the international community. The National Assembly member for Kiang West, Lamin Chez, has alleged that Parliament only rejected these. The Women's Amendment Bill 2024, introduced by members for Foni Kansala, seek to repeal the anti-FGM law which criminalizes female genital mutilation in the Gambia. The Kiang West lawmaker alleges that members voted to uphold the anti-FGM law to get budgetary support from the international community, saying the law would not be implemented regardless. It further argues that forcing people against practicing their cultural and religious rights could bear serious consequences leading to violence. Mr. Chez in this interview began expressing his disappointment over the rejection of the bill.
Quite disappointing, very, very disappointing, and it's one of the darkest days in my parliamentary career, to be on a journey together with people, and at the end of the day, they make a quick shift to a direction that is even against their personal convictions, their personal principles, and their personal religions. So that makes it more disappointing for me. It's a big setback for the country, but then before I get to that, there is a big pretense in the law, and the law will remain, but nobody will be arrested. Nobody will be arrested, and no one will be prosecuted. So there is a pretense in the law, just to get budget support from international community. That's all, and nothing else, nothing more. That's why it remains. But the implications are that if people still persist, they wish to practice female circumcision based on their religion, which is Islam, and Islam accepts. There is nowhere in the world that somebody will tell you this is not Islamic. Of course it is. What they argue on, whether it's compulsory or optional, the government is not going to implement this. It's not going to implement the law, because if they implement the law, they know that people will go out there for them. So they are not going to do that. Even those of them who are strongly advocates of this, we will tell you, look, let us allow this bill to go.
Mr. Chez is a lawmaker representing Kiang West in the Gambia. Ghana's eastern region has recorded 2 additional cases of dengue fever as health officials await results for 57 samples submitted for testing at the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research. This brings the total number of confirmed cases to 11. According to the Eastern Regional Health Directorate, illegal mining areas are at higher risk of contracting the disease. WDR's Accra correspondent Nadi Detete reports.
The Ghana Health Service announced on Sunday, July 14, an outbreak of clinical malaria known as dengue fever in several districts in the eastern region with 9 confirmed cases. Dengue fever, a viral hemorrhagic fever, presents symptoms such as high fever, severe headache, pain behind the eyes, joint and muscle pain, rash, and sometimes bleeding from the mucosal surfaces. Addressing the media on Monday, Eastern Regional Health Director Dr. Winfred Ofosu confirmed the 2 additional cases, indicating that the Health Directorate is managing the outbreak in 5 districts, namely Achiase, Achimansa, Brim Central, Brim South, and Brim North, all of which are areas devastated by illegal mining.
The region is expecting a feedback for 57 more samples that are being worked on. The region currently is managing about 103 suspected cases. Initially it was 9. Some tests have been done again and 2 are positive, so that's why it's come to 11. And like we said, there's still a backlog of tests that are being run at Noguchi. So the likelihood of this number increasing as the day come by is high.
Dr. Winfred Ofosu further disclosed that illegal mining areas and people living around forest and plantation zones are at higher risks of contracting the disease. Residents, particularly pregnant women and their spouses, are vulnerable to the disease and are encouraged to use insect repellents and wear long sleeves shirts and long pants to protect themselves from mosquito bites. The Regional Health Directorate has assured that the situation is under control. Currently, health officials at the regional and national levels have intensified surveillance and rapid response activities. For WADR, Nadiri Teti, Accra.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, we cross over now to Monrovia as we join Darlington Popper for the newspaper review.
For today's edition of Press Review, we have the front page Africa newspaper, the Daily Observer newspaper, and the Analyst's newspaper. We begin with the front page Africa newspaper. Corruption affecting progress. Who is saying this? But we will take a gist of this interesting development on the front page Africa newspaper. The Liberia Council of Churches, RCC, has said that corruption is a huge burden hindering national development in the country, that no country can develop without eliminating graft. From the front page Africa newspaper, we move over now to the Daily Observer newspaper. Liberia faces existential health threat. NMHRA's MD Brown raises alarm over low quality of medical products on local market. National Youth Service Program in sight as youth and children rights activist Ibrahim Keita presents bill to Senate. On the back page of the Daily Observer newspaper, gender disparity in media still persists. Fiji's media monitoring report indicates points an unfavorable picture of women's covering representation in media. The Analyst's newspaper is now our last stop for today's edition of Press Review. AFDB wants Liberia prioritize development, concludes significant consultation mission in Liberia by the African Development Bank. On the back page of the Analyst's newspaper, Speaker Kofa fights off loyalist critique. Tai Wongbe in de facto mode places House Speaker under fire. On that note, that is how I would love to conclude today's edition of Press Review. But before we go, we followed the front page Africa newspaper, the Daily Observer newspaper, and the Analyst's newspaper was our last stop. On that note, thank you so much for following Press Review.
Many thanks, Darlington Popper, for the newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Well, we'll take you back to our report on Togo, where the opposition National Alliance for Change ANC continues to denounce the arrests of people during the latest demonstrations against the new constitution. The opposition party says it is determined to take to the streets to win its case. Well, let's hear more from Eric Dupuy, who is the spokesman for the ANC, the Alliance for Change. He was contacted by Demba Maan from the French service.
Il y a quelques semaines, des jeunes, des élèves, avaient critiqué donc la nouvelle constitution. Ils ont été purement et simplement jetés en prison.
A few weeks ago, young people, school children, were more or less simply thrown into prison under the new ethics and therefore the new constitution. Fortunately, they have since been released. Just recently, at a civil society meeting, a young student described what was going on in Togolese universities. Shortly afterwards, his father was arrested and held in prison. After a series of interventions, protests and so on, he was released a few days ago. Then it was the turn of Madame Matfare, who was arrested for publishing a video of a woman. She was released, but the case is still before the courts. And we say that since the constitution, the new constitution, the constitution of May 2024, there is a kind of leading blanket over Togo.
C'est de maintenir au pouvoir M. Fognassibé ad vitam aeternam.
In
your argument, you said that the Togolese people don't support the new constitution, yet before the text was sent to the National Assembly for second reading, there were consultations between MPs and the Togolese people. Doesn't that mean that the people were consulted before the law was promulgated?
Il n'y a eu aucune concertation. Il n'y a eu aucune concertation. D'abord, les députés qui ont modifié...
There was no consultation. First of all, the MPs who rewrote the constitution did not have the power to do so, since the amendment fell on 31st December 2023. That's the first thing. Secondly, such a rewrite of the constitution would have required a national consultation. It was done in the sly. It was done in secret. We say no. And when you read the text, because first of all, the text was hidden until it was promulgated. I don't know what was communicated. I don't know when they met the people. They went to see certain canton chiefs and village chiefs. I don't know whether these village chiefs and canton chiefs represent all the components of society, especially as it was they themselves who appointed these chiefs. This so-called consultation is totally biased.
Ce qu'ils appellent une consultation est totalement biaisée.
Eric Dupuy aujourd'hui.
Well, Eric Dupuy, where do you stand with your party, the ANC?
L'ANC.
L'ANC continue à travailler et préparer.
The ANC is continuing to work and is preparing for demonstrations, but it's very difficult because today all freedom of demonstration is banned, or at least we are having problems organizing demonstrations in the streets. According to the law, you can't demonstrate in the main streets of the capital. If you have to demonstrate, you have to move away. You have to hide, as it were, in order to demonstrate. This means that the right to demonstrate does not exist in the country. And that means that you comply with the rule and finally accept the new constitution. We cannot accept the constitution, which is why our only elected member of National Assembly refused to take his seat. Mr. Jean-Pierre Fabre, who is elected in the Gulf, refused to take his seat because we cannot accept this constitution and this assembly. And let me tell you that 98% of the members of the National Assembly at 113, I don't see how in a country with almost 100% of the population, on top of that, we are told that 100% of the population votes for a single party. That doesn't exist in a democracy.
Voter pour un seul parti. Cela n'existe pas dans une démocratie.
Eric Dupuy is the spokesman for the ANC, the Alliance for Change in Togo. And here is Uncle Janko with Sport News.
Hello, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Confederation of African Football, CAF, has launched a groundbreaking CAF initiative aimed at further elevating the standard of officiating in Africa. Another first in CAF's forward-thinking strategy of developing African football, the CAF VAR Academy has officially been launched by the governing body of African football with the sole aim of capacitating match officials across all its 54 member associations with the required theoretical and practical skills of the use of video assistant referee VAR, according to CAF official website. Following CAF's recent hosting of what was globally hailed as the most successful CAF Africa Cup of Nations that saw the quality of officiating being singled out, CAF is building onto this success with the innovative academy set to be rolled out between September and October 2024. The CAF VAR Academy will train elite referees across the continent for international competitions and national championships on the use of VAR and ensure that Africa continues to produce elite referees as seen in recent times. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukwedi and Maudo Juf for the technical assistance. Well, let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WDR News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks